Welcome to my thoughts on this breezy Wednesday in London. And again, as I walk down the street, I see us all avoiding one another. And it is difficult when you see people in masks to give them a smile or to know if you got a smile back. And again, I'm coming back to the many times that I have been blessed with the kindness of strangers. And one of the most brilliant things that ever happened to me was when I was traveling around Southwest United States in my fifth wheel trailer with my truck. And I was at the time, I would have been 47, 46 or 47. I had no telephone. And at that time, we had CB radios. And I had one, but I didn't know how to use it. And I had my two dogs and my cats. And I was going through a place called Winnie, Louisiana. And I have looked it up, and it evidently has changed its name. But that was it, Winnie, Louisiana. And I was driving this huge rig, and I pulled into a petrol station. And you have to understand that the rig was 24 feet and the GMC truck was absolutely huge. And I am minute. You can't even see me when I'm steering this rig. It used to look like nobody was driving the thing because I was so small you couldn't see me from the window. And the cat would be looking out the window, gazing at everyone, and how shocked they were. But I pulled into this petrol station in Winnie, Louisiana. And in order to avoid the pumps, the gasoline pumps, I backed up suddenly and I broke all the brake cables between the fifth wheel and my truck. And I got out of the car with my two dogs. I had three dogs then. I had Molly, I had Cindy. No, that's all. I had two, Molly and Cindy. And I got out of the car and the truck and I looked at the damage. And honestly, I didn't know what to do. A single woman all alone in a strange little southern town off the highway, terrified. And this young man was leaning against the wall of the station center. And he was smoking, because we all did then. And he was looking at me. And he said, "You're really in trouble, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "I'm going to help you." No idea who he was. I'd never seen him before. And because I operate under the delusion that all people mean well and no one's going to hurt you, I said, "Oh, I would be so grateful if you do." He said, "I'm going to take you to the only RV repair place in Winnie." And he did. And when we took he pulled the truck. When we took the thing there, um, the mechanic said, "Oh, I'm sorry." He said, "You're going to have to keep it overnight. We're going to have to keep the mobile home overnight." And I said, "You can't have that. First of all, I've got two cats in there. And secondly, I sleep there." And this young man said to me, "Well, you'll just have to stay at our house." And I said, "Oh, I really can't do that. I have a funny diet, um, and I really can't do that." Never thinking there was any ulterior motive at all. Just that I am very OCD. I like my own bed, and I like to eat my own way, and especially because at that time I was still battling the eating disorder and trying to make sure I ate enough but didn't overeat. And he said to me, "I'll buy you what you need." And I said, "Oh," I said, "but the dogs are filthy." He said, "I'll bathe them." I'm thinking, what is this Christmas? Is this Santa Claus? And I got in his car and he stopped at Kmart where his wife was working. And he said, "I want you to meet my wife and I want to tell her that we're bringing you home." So we went into Kmart and I met her. She was just a lovely young lady. And she said to me, "Oh, of course," she said, "we'd be happy to have you. You come, whatever his name is, I don't even remember his name, Jimmy. We'll be glad to take care of you." And we left her, and the dogs are barking and screaming and probably pooping in the car. And we stopped at a grocery store, and I think, what is it? What are their grocery stores? That's a funny name. Winn-Dixie. Yeah, Winn-Dixie. And he literally took me around and said, "What is it that you like?" And I pointed to vegetables because I eat a lot of vegetables and chicken and all the things that I like for dinner. And I said, "I'll pay for it." He said, "No." He said, "You're my guest." And this is somebody whose wife worked at Kmart. he had 3 children at home, and I am sure he was not earning that much money. And he said, "No, you're my guest. You're not paying." He took me home, and I remember I walked in that house, and I had never seen so much filth in my life. Um, my mother, her one forte was housekeeping. She kept an immaculate house. Or let me put it to you this way, she hired the right people to keep the house immaculate. But the house was immaculate. Everything was always in its place. There was no clutter in our house. This place looked like a junk heap, but nobody had cleaned in 30 years. And I stepped over this stuff and I saw the children playing together. They were 3 little boys. And the man took me inside and he said, "This is where," and he took me into his bedroom. Yeah. And he said, "This is where you're going to sleep." And he changed the sheets and made the bed. And then he said, "Now I think it's time to wash those little fellers." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He filled the bathtub and he washed the 2 dogs. And they smelled a hell of a lot better, I assure you. And then we went into the kitchen and he made me dinner. And he was careful not to put too much salt on anything, not to use too much oil. I was very, very careful of my diet. I still am, but then I was a nut. And I had one of the best dinners I had in the time that I was living in that RV. And then he threw a mattress on the living room floor, and I said, "Well, I could sleep there." He said, "No, no, you're my guest. You'll sleep in the bedroom." And I did. And he woke me up at 8 o'clock in the morning. He gave me a beautiful breakfast, uh, drove me over to the RV repair shop, and it was done. Put me in the RV with the 2 dogs, and I tell you, the 2 cats were so happy to see me, they practically spoke. "Where the hell have you been?" And I got in the car, and of course, as usual, you couldn't see me through the window. And I said to him, I could never thank you enough. And honestly, I think his name is something like Jimmy, but I have no idea. And he said to me, "I just was happy to have you." That's what he said. His wife, by the way, if you're wondering what happened with that, she came in after I'd gone to sleep. She was working the night shift at Kmart, and they stayed up late, and then they had to, evidently after they finish at 9 or 10, they have to clean up things and get things together. So she didn't get home. I was asleep by the time she got home, and I never did see her. She was sleeping when I woke up. Um, and he put me in the truck, and I started the RV, and everything was working. And he waved to me. He said, "You have a good trip." And then as I waved, he said, "Love you." And I thought, that man, that young man, knows more about the real meaning of love than I will ever know because he lives it. And it's something that I've tried to do ever since. And thanks so much for joining me for my little thought, a little thought.